So before we get into today's topic, just a quick summary of what we did yesterday. So yesterday we saw one God or many gods. So we saw why we should have faith in scriptures. And we also saw why there are so many different religions. Because if there was only one religion, there would be just one entry point for people to come. And people who don't have the faith or that level of understanding or that level of maturity will be left out. That is why there are various religions and various scriptures. So we saw that the various scriptures are like pocket dictionary, but the Vedic fold is like the Chambers dictionary. So all of them are bona fide dictionaries. They all speak about God, but the information varies. So then we saw, is God one or many? God is definitely one. The same God is called in different names in different religions, but God is one. God has both the personal and the impersonal feature, but we saw that the personal feature is more superior. The impersonal feature is the energy feature that depends on the energetic. Krishna, so we saw who is God according to the definition. So we saw two definitions of God, that God is the source of all sources and he has six opulences in full. So Krishna is the supreme person of Godhead. That is not what ISKCON says. That is what all the Vedic scriptures say. Whether it is the Gita, the Bhagavad or the Vedas, the conclusion is Krishna or Narayan is the supreme. Therefore, Krishna is the one who fits into the two definition of God. So then the question arises, if Krishna is God, then what about the other demigods? So the other devatas are like the administrative heads of the universe. So we saw, just like in a company, there is a CEO and there are department heads. So the various demigods are the department heads running the various departments in the universal affair. So what is the difference between Krishna and the demigod worship? So we saw that Krishna has an eternal residence. Krishna stays in the spiritual world. The demigods stay in the material heavenly planets. So the demigods definitely have a long life, but their life also ends. But Krishna's life is eternal. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So finally, we concluded yesterday's section by explaining that the best way to please everyone, even all the demigods, is by worshipping Krishna. So while if we water the root of a tree, then automatically all the parts of the tree are satisfied. So similarly, if we worship Krishna, then everyone is pleased. All the demigods are pleased. We need not separately endeavor to please them. So that's where we ended yesterday's discussion. So today we are getting into one of the most important topics of the Journey of Self-Discovery course. Why do bad things happen to good people? So this is a very important topic. I'm sure all of you all are awaiting for this. So this question always plagues us. Why do bad things happen to good people? Especially when we go through setbacks in life. All of us, we go through major setbacks. Now, the entire world is going through a setback. This COVID-19 period, everyone is going through health crisis. Everyone is going through financial crisis. So there are a lot of setbacks in the lives of many people. So whenever we come across setbacks, either in our life or in the life of our near and dear ones, someone goes through a cancer episode or anything, or divorce or anything of that sort, we always wonder, Arey, this person was a very nice person. Why is such bad things happening to him? And the other way around, we see that people who do all wrong things, they are very happy in life. They seem to have no problem. So then we wonder, is there God in picture? Is God controlling things, or are things happening whimsically in a haphazard way? What is the idea behind this? How do we understand that someone who does good suffers, someone who does bad enjoys? How do you make sense of it? I remember during my engineering exam, I had done my engineering in Goa College of Engineering, Farmagudi. So there was one friend of mine who would hardly study. In fact, one day before the exam, he would call me and ask me the portion. And I would explain to him all the portion. And Interestingly, this guy never failed in one subject in one semester. He cleared all the papers. And I, compared to him, at least I studied better. But then there were, at least in 2 semesters, I had got backs also, I had failed. So sometimes you wonder, you write an exam well, why do you fail? And someone probably he didn't study that much, he passes off. So many times, especially this chartered accountant, people who write that exam, I know so many of my friends, my cousins who write this exam. So however you write it, good or bad, result doesn't depend on that. Result depends on some other factor altogether. So when such things happen, you wonder whether someone is in control or not. So there are 4 philosophies. The first is called theism. What is theism? Theism means you have faith that God created this world and God is in control of this world also. God is the creator and is the controller. The picture that you see on the screen is Arthur Ashe. So Arthur Ashe was a Wimbledon champion years ago. So one time in the later part of his life, he was detected terminal cancer. He had a very serious illness. So the reporters came and asked Arthur Ashe, why is this happening to you? Why is God giving you the sickness? So Arthur Ashe gave a beautiful reply, amazing reply. He said, lakhs of people, literally 50 lakh people try to learn tennis. Out of that, only 5 lakh people play tennis to some extent. Out of that, 50,000 people enter professional tennis. Out of that, 5,000 people enter Grand Slam and on all those big events. Out of that, 4 people reach the semi-finals, 2 people reach the finals, and then 1 guy wins the Wimbledon Cup. So Arthur Ashe said, out of all those 5 lakh people or 50 lakh people who started to practice tennis, I was the guy who won the Wimbledon Cup. So when I was holding the Wimbledon Cup, as you all can see in the picture, he said, that time I didn't question God, why me? So now when I'm going through a bad time, I have no right to question God, why me? Because if during good times I didn't question God, why me? Why did the cup come to me? It could have gone to someone else. No. I said, yeah, the cup I deserve it, so I get it. So similarly, this disease also, I deserve it. So there is no need to blame God. So this philosophy is called theism, where you have faith that God is the creator and the controller. The second type of understanding or the second perspective of looking at life is called deism. Deism means you have faith that God is the creator, but you feel that God is not the controller. He has lost control of this world. This book is a very famous book. When bad things happen to good people, it was a national bestseller. It was written by a Christian rabbi called Harold Kushner. So Harold Kushner, he explains in this book that when he sees suffering around in this world, he can't understand because he didn't have the wisdom of the Gita. He didn't understand why there is suffering around if God is the controller. So he felt that if there is suffering around, there can be only 2 causes. What is that? One is either God is all powerful. God has all the power to remove suffering, but he is not all merciful. He doesn't have a kind heart. That is why he feels happy seeing that people suffer. Or God is all merciful. He has a wonderful heart. He wants to help people, but God is not all powerful. There is evil, Satan, that has become more powerful than God. So Harold Kushner couldn't conceive that how a God who is all powerful and all merciful simultaneously can exist. Because if God is all powerful and all merciful, then he wouldn't allow people to suffer. So therefore, Harold Kushner came to the conclusion that God is all merciful, but God is not all powerful. God has lost control. Satan has become more powerful than God. So that was deism. So what is deism? Where you have faith that God is the creator, but he is not the controller. And you have the third type of understanding called atheism. This is our famous Charles Darwin. So Charles Darwin, his conviction was God is not even the controller, he is not even the creator. So how did this world come in play? So his understanding is just some chemicals came together. There was a big bang that happened, and all this chemical mixtures happened and life started to be formed. From that primordial soup, life was formed. So this was Charles Darwin's understanding. So what is the definition of an atheist? One who believes that God is not even the creator, he's not even the controller. He doesn't exist in the picture at all. And there is one more type of philosophy or understanding called Confucianism or confusion. That means people really don't know what is happening. You feel that sometimes God is in control, you feel that sometimes God is not in control. You really don't understand what is happening. There is a very interesting story. When the Titanic ship was made, the Titanic ship was advertised as a ship that even God can't sink. They were like fully convinced that this is like the foolproof ship. Even if God comes, nothing will happen to this ship. So this ship was so famous during those times, everyone wanted to travel in this ship, maiden journey. So in Europe, there was one family called the Clark family, very poor peasants. But then because they wanted to go with the entire family on this ship, they worked very hard and put their entire life savings in buying tickets in this ship. But just 2-3 weeks before the ship was to sail, the son of the Clark's family was bitten by a dog. A dog came and bit him. And this boy was tested, and he had to go through all those injections. So the ship authorities, they told this family that this boy cannot come in the ship. He has to be quarantined. Just like now, if you get COVID, you have to be quarantined. So they told him that we can't take him because the rabies might spread. It's very dangerous. So we can't take him. So because the boy couldn't go, the entire family couldn't go. So the entire family was so dejected. Why? Because this was their life's dream to go in the ship. And none of them could go in this ship. So they were all so dejected. They were cursing God. God, why did this happen to us? Why are you doing this to us? Why is bad things happening to good people? They really couldn't understand. But few days later, when they came to know that the ship Titanic sank, the same people who were cursing God now started to thank God. Thank God that we couldn't sail in that ship. Thank God that the dog came and bit my son. Because if that dog didn't bite, they would be in the ship and all of them would have lost their lives. So the point is that we can't understand God's plan, but we need to have faith that God has something in play. So apparently something may be bad for us at this point, but then down the line, few years down the line, we will understand that this thing was the best thing to happen. Because if this didn't happen, we wouldn't be in the place where we are right now. So this is called Confucianism. So in today's session, we will try to understand, is God responsible for our happiness or distress? Who is responsible? Are we responsible for our happiness and distress, or is God responsible for our happiness and distress? Or is both of us, the responsibility shared between us and God? So when distress comes in life, is it because of our activities, or is it because God wants it? What is the understanding behind this? We will try to understand it today's session. So till now, the overview of the Journey of Self-Discovery course, day 1, we saw search for happiness. So we saw that we are all searching for the right thing, that is happiness, but in the wrong place in the material world. Why? Because this material world we defined is dukkhalayam according to Gita, a place where there is misery. Hmm? So we are searching for the right thing, happiness, but in the wrong place. Day 2, we discuss, does God exist? Is there someone up there? Is there someone called God at all? We saw many proofs of the existence of God, and we saw how to get knowledge about God. In day 3, sorry, here it is mentioned at day 4, we saw who am I? I am a spirit soul, we are not this body. And then we saw in day 3, which we saw yesterday, who is that person? Who is that Supreme Lord? We saw Krishna is that Supreme Lord. Today, we are in day 5. We are in day 5. We are going to discuss two things in today's session. Where am I? This material world, where am I? And second thing is, why I am there in this material world? We are going to discuss these two things today. And in tomorrow's session, we are going to discuss how do I get back to the spiritual world from where I am right now. So the Gita discusses primarily 5 main topics. Paramatma, or the Supreme Lord. Atma, that means the spirit soul, all of us. Prakriti, material and spiritual nature, or material and spiritual world. The fourth is Kala, time. And the fifth is Karma, action and reaction. So Paramatma we saw in day 2 and day 4. Atma we saw in day 3. Correct, in day 3. Prakriti and Kala and Karma. These 3 things we are going to see today. What is material nature? What is spiritual nature? We are going to see today. We are going to see something about time, Kala, and we are going to see something about Karma, action and reaction. Arjun Prabhu, like to continue?
Hare Krishna. So, before we again continue with this thing, so actually this should be interactive. If one of you all can tell me by raising hands or by chat, some method will be good. So these are quick questions, just question, and someone can just immediately answer. Where has the soul come from? Previously we have learned this.
Soul has come from Krishna.
Yeah, from the spiritual world.
Yes.
And where has the soul come to?
Material world.
Yeah,
material world.
Soul has come to us.
Yes. No, soul has come to this material world from the spiritual world.
Spiritual world.
Next slide. Yeah. So if you see this small diagram here, this is how is just a depiction. The half of the, actually it is said that 3/4 of this creation is the spiritual world, and a small part, maybe around 1/4, is the material world. So if you see here, the topmost part, you will see Radha and Krishna, and then there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets where there are many forms of Vishnu. Then in between there is Ayodhya. So all these places which are there, which visually you see in this material world also. Like when Krishna came here on this earth planet, he came to Mathura. Similarly, that same Mathura is there in the spiritual world. Lord Ram came to city Ayodhya. So that Ayodhya is there in the spiritual world also. Just like it is like an embassy. Like Indian embassy is there in America, Indian embassy is there in China, Indian embassy is there in other various countries. So similarly, Krishna has his embassies in all the universes, and their name also is the same. So this universe here, from this spiritual world, we come to one of the universes among innumerable universes. So as we saw in the first session, this material world is called as Kunda, means full of miseries, and spiritual world is called as Vaikuntha, which means free from miseries. So if you remember, the miseries are birth, old age, disease, death, and the other three, Adhyatmic, Adidevik and Adhyatmic, Adidevik and Adibhautik Klesh. So this is the picture. We have come from the spiritual world, which is free from miseries, to the material world, which is full of miseries. Dukhalayam or Shashvatam. Next slide. So here, just like I had explained, the spiritual world is where Radha Krishna are there in Vrindavan. Then there is Ayodhya Dham. Then you see innumerable Vaikuntha planets where Krishna is in the form of Vishnu, four-handed form of Vishnu. Next slide. And in between the spiritual world and the material world is the effulgence of Krishna, which is called as Brahma Jyoti. Like we discussed, three aspects of God: the energy, which is Brahman, and Paramatma and Bhagwan. So the Brahman, which we say, that is the middle portion, which is, you can see light there. So that whole thing is called as Brahma Jyoti. And this is the followed by, you see one more Vishnu in the material world side, who is called as Mahavishnu. From his pores there are universes which come out when he breathes. So through that breathing the universes come out, and each universe will have another Vishnu who will be called as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Next slide. Yeah, this is like the focused picture of one universe. We'll not go in very detail because it's very technical. We can have a separate class for this. So this whole, that's why it's called as Brahmanda. Anda means like an egg, shape of an egg. And the crust of this universe is made up of Pancha Mahabhut: earth, water, fire, ether and air. And within the universe, first person will be Lord Vishnu, who is sleeping on Garbhodak ocean, is the water. And from his navel comes becomes the birthplace of Brahma, who is the first living entity or the first person who is created. And then Brahmaji creates the 14 planetary systems. It will not be visible very much, but there are 14 planetary systems. On top there are Swarga, Janaloka, Tapaloka and Satyaloka, and down there are Atal, Vital, Sutal, Patal and all lower planetary systems. So just to give a rough idea of the universe. Next slide. So it's very important, what is our original position? We do not belong to this material world. We belong to the spiritual world, which is along with Krishna. Like we were with Krishna, having a nice relationship with him as a friend or a parent or so many relations which we'll be explaining. So this is our origin. Next. Then the question comes, what made us come to this material world? Why have we come here? So scriptures explain that when we try to become independent of God, means what happens? We also want to be like God in one sense. We think that, okay, I also can be independent controller. I also can be independent enjoyer. Why should I always be following the instructions of God? So then what happens? Because of this desire, we actually forget our identity as a spirit soul. And we come to this material world, which is a facility given by God to us to enjoy in this material world. We'll try to enjoy in this material world. So two things happen as soon as we come to this material world. First thing is we forget our identity as spirit soul, and second thing is we identify with the material body, which is made of flesh and bones. Next slide. So the example is given, just like when we are with we are serving or we are a driver of a very big personality and we are driving his car. So we are actually working for him. But at the same time, if you see, the car is enjoyed by whom? Both the driver as well as the passenger. But only difference is what between the driver and the passenger, or the driver and the owner of the car? difference is that the driver has to obey the instructions of passenger or the owner. But if the driver says, no, I want to go where I want to go, or I will decide where the car will go. So immediately what will the owner say? Then please don't drive my car. You have to have your own car. So that is how, as soon as we actually try to become independent of God, then the other facility has to be created where we would like to be independent. Next slide. Now someone may say, why does Krishna allow us to come to this material world? Because we already told that material world is full of suffering, or it is a temporary place. Can't Krishna stop us from going there? Can't he, like if one of our child says, no, I want to be independent, but parents will try to stop him. So actually Krishna tries to stop us. Even right now also Krishna is giving the opportunity or trying to remind us again, you come back to me. But as the soul becomes stubborn, or he is really wanting to rebel, then the best teacher is what? To allow that person or allow the child to experience misery. So that's why this illusion is created, or this illusory world is created in one sense. World is real, but it's kind of an illusion because it is temporary. So the best, just like for a best teacher, is the experience. It's like a child, if he says, no, I want to go and touch the fire, or I want to go and touch fire, and the parent says, no, don't go there, you will be burned, you will be burned. But the child will not believe. The child may say, no, I want to touch somehow. So then the father may say, okay, go and touch the hot substance and come. Just go and touch the hot pot or something like that. So as soon as he gets burnt, he says, oh, sorry, I didn't know, now I believe you. So in similar way, Krishna also allows us to go to this material world, try to experience being independent of him, and as soon as we realize that we cannot be independent, then Krishna gives us the facility. He is always ready to take us back, or rather he is encouraging us to come back. Next slide. Another example is given. If the child, you might have seen in the childhood, many children, they play one game. They say that we also want to play like a family. One child will become mother, some child will act like a father, someone will act like children. So in this way they may make a small house of some bed sheets and other thing. So they go and they cook their own food. So to cook, there are small arrangement of even the parents give them toys, toy knife, toy gas, toy all kinds of spoons and other things. So they take some mud, cook it, take some water, take some leaf and cook, and they just act like as if they are cooking and eating everything. But if you see, actually, when the real hunger comes, when they are really hungry, what happens? They will come running to their mother and say, mother, give me some food. So what happens? Actually although they are enjoying, engrossed in their own play, but that play is not real food. It is just a kind of distraction. And similarly, at the same time, the mother cannot give them real knife. Mother cannot give them real big gas. They cannot, because they don't know how to handle fire. They don't know how to handle sharp knife. They will hurt themselves. So that separate arrangement is made. Similarly, in this material world is also a replica of spiritual world, where we have our relatives. We have all kinds of different arrangements. Someone becomes the king. Someone becomes the citizen. Someone becomes all kinds of everything. All arrangements are there, as good as the spiritual world. But these relationships here and these roles which you take, which are connected to this material body, they don't give us pleasure, or they give us so-called pleasure, but they are not real pleasure, which do not satisfy the soul. So ultimately, the person questions, am I really happy? Is there any other permanent happiness? And when he gets the answer to the scriptures, yes, there are real relationships. There is real happiness. There is permanent place. So then the soul understands, oh, I have to go to my father, real father, to get the real happiness. So similarly, just like the child runs to the mother, the spirit soul who gets enlightened, he also runs to the real father. Next slide. So now, can any one of you answer why has the soul come here based on whatever we spoke now?
Hare Krishna, we wanted to become independent of our original father, and we also wanted to enjoy life. So we came to this material world.
Right, exactly. Correct. Yes. Next slide. So material world is 1/4 of the creation of God. Next. This word, just like in the first session we understood, Dukkhalayam and Ashashvatam, which is miserable and temporary. So then you might say, couldn't God create a better place? Why did God create such a messy place? Next slide. So now, quick answers. Just like there's a question, what are the possible things needed when we plan a new city? Say all of you are appointed as the smart city planning commissioners, and all of you are told that please present a report what all you are going to make. So please, can you all in the chat box, can you all type some things which will be required for a city, which are very important for the city? Good roads, yes. What else? Perfect smart city, water arrangement, PWD can call. Electricity, yes, lighting systems, electric grid, hospitals, schools, internet facility, communication, yes, law and order, courts, temples, infrastructure, yes, in infrastructure, drainage systems, ISKCON temples, thank you. And anything else? Supermarkets, yes. For entertainment, no one wants a theater. Houses, agriculture, restaurant, yes. Banks, conveyances, parks, public police station, yes. And one very important thing which is connected to police station, jail. One of them. Yes. So isn't jail a part of the planning? Yeah. So this for the slides. We can. Buildings. Yeah, all your answers are correct. We're just going to the slides. Buildings, temples, churches, colleges, hospitals, playgrounds, malls, theaters, stadium, roads, bridges, and also a prison house. So why is prison house also very important? Because there will be someone who will disobey the government. Although government, it's not a pleasure for the government to build prison house. Although it becomes necessary because of the nature of some people. Otherwise, it is not a pleasure to maintain a prison house. Actually, government spends a lot of income on maintaining the prison houses. So similarly, next slide. need of prison house is there will be someone who will break the laws of government. Next slide. So what is a prison house is for rectification. So government doesn't take pleasure in punishment, but it is necessary to rectify the prisoners. And in prison house, what is important? Prison house cannot be just like a very beautiful place with parks and with facility for TV and facility for nice things to eat. So prison house means one of the most important feature of prison house is it should be austere and it should be like a punishment. It should be confined. So that is why this material world is like a compared to a prison house or a rectification place. And it is necessary that in the material world there has to be suffering, or there will be suffering basically. Next slide. So what is given to a prisoner? Punishment. Similarly, the prison house of this material world, the nature of this also will be to give pain and punishment, so that a person rectifies. Otherwise, the prisoner will say, "Oh, it's such a nice place. I will be here, just disobeying the laws of government. I'm waiting, so, but it's better than the outside world." So it should not be like that. Next. So what are the different punishments or pains which are given? Birth, then it will be death, then old age, disease. So we see this, these four are the punishments: birth, old age, disease and death. And in addition to that, just like in a prison house, there is always a jailer who will award the punishments, who will make sure that the prisoners are disciplined and get enough pain. Similarly, this material world also has a jailer. Yeah, next slide. So can you guess the jailer? Next slide. So she is in charge for, or she is the name itself, Durga means one who is in charge of the Durga, or Durga like a fort, in charge of the fortress. So similarly here, she is in charge of this punishment, and she has these three weapons, or she has this Trishul in her hand. This Trishul represents the three miseries in addition to those four punishments. The three miseries are Adhyatmik, Adi Devik and Adi Bhautik. These kleshas which are there. Threefold miseries. The miseries caused by the mind and body is called Adhyatmik. Adi Bhautik is miseries caused by other living entities, and miseries caused by the natural forces, Adi Devik. So these three. So in total there are 7 miseries which are there. So of all this material world can be fit in this. Next slide. So Durga Devi, just like a jailer, he wants us to be rectified. Similarly, Durga Devi is motivating us to go back to Krishna, go back to the spiritual world, rectify us. And then, so this rectification is the process, or the purpose of this material world itself is rectification. Not that we are come here to enjoy. Many of the people in this world, they think that the purpose of this material world is enjoyment. So they even write songs to this effect. They say the life is so short, let us enjoy. Life is so short, we should enjoy as much as possible. 4 din ki zindagi. But the problem is what? This world is not designed for enjoyment. Rather, it is designed in such a way that these miseries are sure to come. No one in this world can avoid these 4 things and these 3 things. you may be anyone may be as rich as possible, or anyone may be as strong or beautiful, but no one can avoid these sufferings because it is the nature of this world. Next slide. So the best thing is we should go back to the spiritual world or Vaikuntha, which is free from miseries. So this is the uh, purpose of this, or birth, purpose of this material world. Next slide. So what is first thing done to a prisoner as soon as someone enters a prison house? What is done to him? He is first given a dress. In some places it may be orange, someone may have some other strips, someone is given a half pant and everything. But similarly here, first thing is the dress is changed. So the spiritual body becomes this material body. Next slide. Similarly, we are also given different dresses. You can see there are, so all these options are there. There are 7 lakh species of in water, those which live in water. 20 lakh which are non-moving trees. 11 lakh species of insects and reptiles. There are 10 lakh species of birds. 30 lakh quadruples, animals, and 4 lakh species of human beings. In total, 84 lakh species. It's called 84 lakh yoni. So all these are various bodies which are, or so many options which are given by the material world, so that we can get those bodies. Next slide. So all this will be fishes and trees, insects, so many varieties of them. You just see the National Geographic, you see so many varieties, and there will be so many which we might have even not seen also. Beautiful birds and animals, and then there are 4 lakh types of human species also, beginning from the, so all kinds of consciousness, including the devatas, all come in the human species. So these are all the material body, which is like the jailer's dress or the prisoner's dress. Next slide. So this prison which is staying in this world, it is made without walls. We are used to a prison which is completely blocked. Of course, it is confined in the universe. The universe is confined, but still it is without walls. Just like a person, a prisoner, if you want to escape from the prison, he has to cross the walls in the material world. But this is a special kind of prison. Here he cannot cross the walls at all. But he has to desire properly. He has to change his desires from material to spiritual. That is the only way to cross this material world. There is no other way. The only way is, again, spiritualize our desires. That's why Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parityajya. Surrender your desires to me, or surrender your will to me. Then a person can cross this material world. Next slide. So how are we born in this prison house? This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. It's like someone is born in this material house, this world. We are bound by 3 gunas, 3 modes of material nature. These are very subtle. We cannot even perceive them. They are called as Rajogun, Sattvagun, and Tamogun. So everyone is acting according to these gunas. So we'll explain these gunas in detail sometime. So you can continue.
Yeah. So basically, till now, what we saw was why did Krishna make this material world? First thing is, Krishna made this material world for all of us. Just like a government doesn't like to make a prison house. The government doesn't, the government doesn't have a cruel heart to torture people. it doesn't like to make a prison house, but it has to make a prison house because there will be some people who will definitely break rules and laws. Similarly, this material world is compared to a prison house. So God doesn't want to make it, but he has to make it because there will be a certain set of people who will want to be independent of him. So that is the reason this material world is made. But we need to remember that this material world is also God's mercy. It is Krishna's mercy. Because as we were discussing, just like in a prison house is made for the betterment of the prisoner only, so that he can become better and he can realize his mistake and become free. That's the whole idea of the prison house. So similarly, this material world is made, it's Krishna's mercy on all of us, so that we can learn our lessons well and we can come out of this material world and become free and go back to the spiritual world. That is the whole understanding. And then we saw that once you come to the material world, just like you change clothes, we have different bodies. Just like, you have a jailer, Durga Devi is like the jailer who's giving us different sufferings. And just like a person in the material world or in a prison house is bound by chains, we are all bound by three modes. This is called Sattva Guna, Raja Guna, and Tamo Guna. So Sattva Guna is like an A-class jail or like a golden chain. Rajoguna, passion, is like a B-class jail, a silver chain, and Tamoguna is like a C-class jail, iron chain. So what does Sattva Guna mean? Anyone who is in the mode of goodness, he has very less material desires, he is much more peaceful, much more happier. Someone who's in the mode of passion has unlimited desires. Ye dil mange more, never satisfied, and especially attraction for the opposite sex. And someone in the mode of ignorance is always intoxicated, completely lazy. Right? He's in a different world completely on his own. So these are the three modes. Okay, so now I have a question for all of you all. Think carefully about this question and then answer. If you are given a choice to be bound by golden chain, silver chain, or iron chain, if you're given a choice that you can be bound either by a golden chain, silver chain, or iron chain, which chain you will choose? Which chain you will prefer? Someone is saying golden chain. Anyone else has any other thought? Someone is saying Krishna's chain. None of this, yeah.
None.
Correct. So, yes, if someone, the best choice is not to be bound by any chain at all. Because even being bound by golden chain is a chain only, no? So best is not to have any chain. Just like if someone tells you, if you are caught in a traffic jam, which car you would prefer? Maruti 800 or Audi or BMW. If you're caught like for 10 hours in a traffic jam, the best option is not to be caught in a traffic jam only. Similarly, even though mode of goodness is good, but still the idea is it is still binding in this material world. So the idea of practicing Bhakti Yoga is that we become free from chains altogether. No more entanglements. So the Gita, the 14th, 16th, 17th chapter, and even in the 18th chapter, the three modes are explained in detail. So characteristic of mode of goodness is madness, laziness, sleep, intoxication. And Krishna explains that everything is in the three modes, like food in the mode of goodness. Sattva Guna Ahar. What is that? Fruits, vegetables, milk. So all this is grains, all this is Sattva Guna food. Food in the mode of ignorant passion is anything that is too spicy, too salty, too sour. Any extremes is mode of passion. And food in the mode of ignorance is anything that is stale, rotten, decomposed. It's food in the mode of ignorance. Similarly, you have music in the three modes. Music in the mode of goodness is something that's soothing, peaceful. As soon as you hear it, you feel very peaceful, your godly sentiments come up. Food in the music in the mode of passion is something it's pulsating. It just boils your blood and it increases your desire to enjoy. Music in the mode of ignorance is filled with something that's songs of depression and all these things. So practically everything is in the three modes. Even timings of the day are in three modes. Like morning time is in the mode of goodness, daytime is mode of passion, and night time is mode of ignorance. Like you have everything in three modes. So similarly, like in Ramayana, this beautiful example is there. Ravan was in the mode of passion. Kumbhakarna, Ravan's brother, was in the mode of ignorance, always sleeping. But Ravan had a third brother, Vibhishan, who was in the mode of goodness. So we saw till now, Prakriti, material world, it offers us punishment in the form of birth, old age, disease, death, and three miseries. It offers purification from a lust, anger, pride, envy, lust, illusion, etc. The various 84 lakh species are the various dresses, the costumes, and the three modes are the various chains or the ropes that bind us. So that was about Prakriti. Okay, so before we go ahead to Kala, is there any questions? You all can unmute and ask. Was it clear till now? Any doubts, any questions, any confusion? Yeah.
These three modes of material nature, all of us will have all the three types, right?
Yeah, we'll have a mixture of all the three types.
Thank you, Prabhu. Because at a given time, we may be Sattvic Gun may be predominating sometimes.
Yeah, Krishna explains in the Gita that there is always fight between these three modes for supremacy. Sometimes Sattva wins, sometimes Raja wins. So this is constantly going on.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Engaging in Krishna consciousness, will this three mode arise or means eliminate?
Yeah. If you practice Krishna conscious well, you can transcend these three modes. Nistray Gunya Bhavarjuna, Krishna tells in the Gita. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question before I go to the chat? Anyone else wants to ask any other question? Was it clear till here? Any confusions?
Prabhu, any example who has gone above all the three modes of material nature?
Oh, many examples. Many examples. If you read the Bhagavatam, you'll find Pandavas, you'll find Prahlad, Dhruva, so many sages. Tukaram Maharaj, yeah. Many examples. Vibhishan, Hanumanji. You can go on and on. Okay, so I'll go to the chat. Srila Prabhupada also, yes, yeah. So I'll go to the chat. Without desire, will there be any progress? Yes, we cannot eliminate desire, but we can transform desire from material to spiritual. Like Arjun Priya Prabhu explained, we come to the material world because we've desired wrongly. We had a desire that I want to enjoy separately of God. That is why we come in this material world. And we go back to the spiritual world by desiring rightly. What should be a desire now? That now I want to serve God. I want to be, I want to cooperate with the will of God. Then the desire gets purified from material to spiritual. Material desires means selfish desires, I and mine. Spiritual desires means where you're thinking about the service of God and others. Yeah. So can we come back down as well when we go back to Godhead, keeping in mind the prison as example? Yeah. So generally, if you go back to the spiritual world, you can come, but no one will come. It's just like this, that if someone has a bad experience already, yeah, like the English saying is, experience is the best teacher. So just being in this material world for a long time and going through all the 84 lakh species. So anyone who goes back to the spiritual world, all the experience of the material world remains like a dream there. So no one wants to come back. So the conviction becomes very strong. Yeah. So the chances are very less. So there's one question. The Atal, Patal, Vital and all of them, are they hellish planets? Yes, they are hellish planets. Do people experience punishment there? Yes. Does Yamaraj reside there? No. Yamaraj resides on a separate lok called Yamalok. Yeah. Anything else in till what we have discussed till now before we go ahead? Okay, was it clear? Were concepts clear to y'all? No one is answering.
Yes, Prabhu, very clear as always.
Yes, good. Okay, so now we'll go to the next section called Kala, time. So till now we discussed Prakriti, material nature, and spiritual world, spiritual nature. So now we'll go to Kala, time. So Krishna tells in the Gita that time is the most powerful force and the ultimate killer. So when Krishna shows the universal form to Arjuna, Arjuna tells Krishna, show me your universal form, and Krishna shows it. Arjuna is like shocked, he's scared, he's mesmerized, because he knows Krishna as a two-handed form. Suddenly he sees this ghastly, huge form of Krishna. The mouths of Krishna are wide open, and so many people are entering into the mouth, fire emanating from the mouth. So Arjuna becomes very scared. And Arjuna is asking Krishna, who are you? What is your introduction? And that time Krishna says, Kalosmi Bharata Shrabha. Krishna says, oh Arjuna, I am Kal. I am time. So God is ultimately time. And ultimately, time is the most powerful factor. In this world, history, if you study history, what is history? There are many, many powerful people who have come in this world, but ultimately the winner is one, time. No one else wins time. Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, Ravan, Kumbhakarna, Hitler, Mussolini, and so many Stalin, so many people, Alexander the Great, you name anyone and everyone, there are so many people who have come, very powerful people, but ultimately all of them have gone because no one can fight with the power of time. So, in our Vedic scriptures, it is explained that time is cyclic and there is a universal time. It is called Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. These are the universal time. Just like the present Yuga is called Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga has 4,32,000 years, out of which only 5,000 years are over. That means 4,27,000 years are left of Kali Yuga. Double that is the previous Yuga called Dwapar Yuga. So 2 times Kali Yuga. 3 times Kali Yuga is Treta Yuga, when Lord Ram came. And 4 times Kali Yuga is Satya Yuga, when Narsingadev came. So this is how the cycle goes on. So there's Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. So Kali is like the most degraded age. Satya is the age where there is the maximum amount of piety and goodness, and it degrades down. So Satya Yuga is considered to be like the golden age, and Kali Yuga is considered to be the iron age. So it degrades down. So Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali, and after Kali Yuga, what is there? Again, Satya Yuga comes back again. It goes in a cycle. Just like you have morning, afternoon, evening, night, and then again what you have? Morning, afternoon, evening, night. It goes on a cycle. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and again Monday. It goes on in a cycle. So time is cyclic. Like you have seasons also. There is winter, then there is summer, then rainy, again winter, summer, it goes on like that. So in this world, time is cyclic. So this is the calculation of the universal time. Kali Yuga is 4,32,000. Dwapar Yuga is 2 times Kali, 8,64. Treta Yuga is 3 times Kali, 12,96. And Satya Yuga is 17,28,000 years. So all these 4 together is 43,20,000 years. Is the one Divya Yuga on one Chatur Yuga, right? So similarly, there is a calculation of the universe. How many Chatur Yugas? There are like thousands of Chatur Yugas like this make one cycle, the duration of the universe. Yeah. So just like even in this world, you have this transformation. Like the child is born, birth, then there is growth, and then there is maintenance, then there is reproduction, then the body dwindles, and then there is death. And after death, what? Again, there is a birth. Krishna tells in the Gita, Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Tasmad api are arte natvam sochitam arhasi. Krishna says, just like a person is born, a person who is born is sure to die, and one who is dead is sure to be born again. So this cycle continues. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janare jatare shainam. Shankaracharya says, again birth, again death, again into a womb of another mother. So this cycle continues until we press that escape button. We exit out of it consciously, voluntarily, by the process of surrendering to God or Bhakti Yoga, which we will explain tomorrow. So time is considered to be the greatest gambler. In a gambling den or in a casino, sometimes when you play, it appears that you win, a few times. So just so that you get addicted to go on playing, and then finally you put a lot of money and you lose everything. So that's how gambling works. There's an entire mindset, an entire program that goes on behind it. So similarly, many times it appears that, hey, this guy is becoming really successful, really powerful, no one can overpower him. But finally time comes, God in the form of time comes and makes that final sweep, and everything is squared off. Just like, there is a Chinese saying, at the end of a chess game, both the king and the pawn go in the same box. So in this world, however great we may be or whoever anyone is, ultimately there is equality, because time, everyone goes to the same equation, the same kind of suffering. So now we come to the topic of karma, the law of karma. So what is the law of karma? So someone may have this question, why are some people beautiful and some people ugly? Why are some people, they get the best of education, some hardly get anything, they don't even have basic needs? Why are some people fair, some dark? Why do someone stay in a mansion and someone is born in a hut? Why are some born to rich parents, or as they say, with a silver spoon, and why are some born to poor parents? Is God so partial and cruel? Why is God doing this partiality? Why is God so cruel? Why is there so much suffering and disparity in this world? You have people who are poor, people who are rich. There is so much difference. Why so much disparity? Why is God doing this? So we need to understand that the same judge sometimes awards someone rigorous imprisonment. They send him to jail for a lifetime imprisonment, or he may hang him. And in the next case, immediately after that, the judge may offer someone compensation. He may give someone money, lakhs of rupees. So someone may question, is the judge, why is the judge awarding different judgments? Is the judge partial? No, the judge is not partial. Rather, depending on the activities of the individual and according to the laws, the law book, he offers different judgments. So he sees the individual, he studies the case, he sees the law book and then offers a judgment. So the judge, when he gives money to someone, it doesn't mean that he likes that guy. That fellow is his favorite. And when the judge offers capital punishment to someone, it doesn't mean that he hates him. The judge doesn't have any personal connection with anyone. For him, everyone is the same. He just sees the law book, studies the case and awards judgment. Similarly, Krishna tells in the Gita, in the 9th chapter, Samoham sarva bhuteshu namedvesho stinapriya ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mayi te teshu chapyaham. Krishna says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu. I am equal to all. Samoham sarva bhuteshu namedvesho stinapriya. There is no one who is partial to me. There is no one who is a favorite to me, and I don't envy anyone. Neither am I partial to anyone, nor do I envy anyone. I see everyone equally. So Krishna is like the neutral judge as the Paramatma. He's like the neutral judge who studies the activities of the individual, sees the law, and then offers judgment. So just like there is a judge, so Paramatma, just like we have in our body Atma, we are the Atma. Along with the Atma, the Paramatma is constantly there. He is the eternal witness. Upadrashta Anumanta cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara. Krishna tells in the Gita. So Krishna is the overseer as the Paramatma. So Krishna's vision is always on. Just like you have a CCTV camera which is constantly recording. So Krishna as the Paramatma is the original CCTV camera. Everything is being recorded. Not only what we do, but what we speak and what we think, everything is noted by Paramatma. We may have forgotten what we have said, what we have taught. We may forget, but God will never forget. Everything is noted down. So, first we will see the definition of the law of karma. What is the definition? Okay, before that, a quick quiz, what we have done till now. All of you are ready? Who am I? You all can unmute and speak.
Spirit soul.
Spirit soul. Okay, very good. So someone else will answer the next. We are the spirit soul. The next question. Where are we? Someone else.
In the material world.
Perfect. We are in the material world. What situation are we in? Any thought? You all can guess. Think about it.
In miseries.
1 minute. Yeah, we are in the material body. We are in the material body. Okay. What are we bound by? Someone else can answer. What are we bound by?
The mode of material nature.
Yeah, very good. Who is controlling us? Yeah, you all can answer in the chat also. I'm seeing the chat now.
Maya.
No. Who's controlling us?
Our mind.
Yeah, true. But here it's time. Okay, fine. Who's watching us? This you all can answer. Who's watching us? Krishna. But Krishna as what? As the Paramatma is watching us. Okay, good. So this is what we discussed till now. Okay, so what is the definition of the law of karma? Activities performed by the soul in the material body, conditioned by the three modes of material nature, under the control and purview of time, is called karma. Activities performed by the soul, by the living soul, in the material body. So karma applies only in the material world, not in the spiritual world. Just like when you sit in a rickshaw, the rickshaw fellow or the taxi guy puts on the meter. Meter starts as soon as you sit. Similarly, as soon as we get into a material body, the first material body that we have in this world, karma meter starts. Everything starts getting recorded after that. So we are under the purview, conditioned by the three modes and under the purview of time. So in simple words, definition of law of karma is Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This is Newton's third law. Just 1 second. So basically Newton's, or in the language of the Bible, it is, as you sow, so shall you reap. So if you sow a neem seed, you will reap a neem fruit, a bitter fruit. If you sow a mango seed, you will reap a mango fruit. Correct? As you sow, so shall you reap. How does the law of karma work? Just like this saying is, the mills of God grind very slow but exceedingly fine. भगवान के घर में देर है अंधेर नहीं. So the mills of God may take time for it to come, but it will definitely come. If you have done something good, it may take time for the results to come, but it will definitely come. And if someone has done something bad, it may take for the reaction to catch him, but it will definitely catch him. That is what the scriptures are meant for. The Kurukshetra war, it appeared that the Pandavas were going through suffering after suffering, even though they were good, but then ultimately they won. They became the rulers of the entire world. And Duryodhana and company, it was appearing that they are really doing great politics and winning over and manipulating, but ultimately they had to meet their end. So there cannot be any injustice or anything wrong in the God's law. The government of the police or the courts may make a mistake, or they may not be able to punish a criminal, but in God's laws, everyone will equally have to face their suffering according to their actions. So there are three doers: the spirit, soul, material nature, and the Supreme Lord. So these are the three doers that comes in the Gita. We, the Atma, the nature, material world, material nature, Prakriti, and the Supreme Lord. So when all three come together, then an action becomes perfect. Just like the example is, the soul is like a customer. If you go to a restaurant and you order something, and the waiter or the cook, they prepare it and they come and offer you. But after you finish eating it, you walk out, there is a cashier. He will tell you, please pay the bill. If you tell him, I didn't know I had to pay, the cashier will tell you, if you have come in a restaurant, you need to understand that whatever you are ordering here, you have to pay the amount. There is no free ride in this material world. Anything that we do, there is a price tag that we have to pay for. Everything in this material world has a price tag on it. So we are like this customer in this place. We come in this material world, which is like a restaurant, and we tell our desires. I want this, I want this. And material nature may provide it, but ultimately we have to pay it with our currency. What is the currency? Karma is our currency here. So just like, you have like a lot of 5-star hotels. To get into the 5-star hotel, or even to order a tea in a 5-star hotel, minimum you will need 5,000 rupees in your pocket. If you don't have that, you should not go in a 5-star hotel. Why? Because only people with that amount can order stuff there. So similarly, depending on how much karma currency we have, depending on that, we can desire in this world, and the material nature will provide us those desires. But ultimately, everything is noted down. Just like sometimes in a restaurant, you order this, then you order this, you order 10 items. You have forgotten what you have ordered, but the bill will come exactly correct, because every item that is being ordered is noted for, and then the bill will come. So we have to pay for everything that we do in this world. So that's how the law of karma works. So we saw the definition of the law of karma. We saw how the law of karma works. How the law of karma works by the combination of the living entity's desire, the material nature, and the permission of the Supreme Lord. What are the different kinds of karma? There is something called good karma, good activities. Or in Sanskrit, it is just called karma, plain word karma. So what are good activities? Good activities is like giving charity or helping others, giving food to others. This is good activities. So what do you get for good activities? You will get good result. Just like if you give someone education, you are assured you will get education, or in your next life you will get birth in a very educated family. Or if you give people food, you may never have shortage of food. If you share your money, you may have a lot of money with you. So you get good results. And the best kind of good result is you go to the heavenly planets and enjoy. Correct? You go to Swarga Loka and enjoy. So now there is something called vikarma or bad karma, bad activities, basically meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, like that. So when you do bad karma, either you suffer in this world only, like someone drinks a lot, there is suffering in this world only, right? You get lung cancer and so many things, your liver cirrhosis and all those things happen. Or even if you don't suffer in this world, in this life, in the next life you may definitely suffer being born in the lower species or in the hellish planets. And then there is something called akarma, neutral activity. One is good activity, bad activity, and there is something called akarma, neutral activity. What is neutral activity? Activity for which you don't get good result nor bad result, but by doing akarma, you square off all your karma account. You make it zero, and then you go back to the spiritual world. In tomorrow's topic, practical application of Gita, we are going to discuss akarma in detail. What is akarma? We are going to discuss in detail. So we'll keep this topic for tomorrow. Okay. So now, if all of y'all have been attentive in today's class, I'll ask a question. Think about it and answer. If someone does good activities and he goes to the heavenly planet, what is the problem with it? What is the problem in heavenly planet?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
As soon as that amount of good karma he has earned finishes, he has to again come back.
Perfect. Perfect. So Krishna tells in the Gita, Shine punya martya lokam vishanti. Shine punya means as soon as your punya is over, you have to come down. So just like, you know, if you have a lot of money, you go on a trip to America. But how long you stay in America? As long as your money is there. As soon as your money runs out, you will have to come back. So material world is like a heavenly planet. It's like a great facility of foreign country. So you go there, you will get to enjoy. But once your karma gets over, you will have to come back. That is why the best option is to do a karma, which we will see in tomorrow's session. So we saw 3 types of karma. Karma means good activities, vikarma is bad activities, and akarma is neutral activities. Out of these 3, neutral activities is the best. So now, next is, what is the duration of the results of karma? How long it takes for the reaction to come? So, there are 2 types of karma. One is instant karma. You will get the reaction immediately or quite soon. Just like, you know, you have this ATM. You put your card, type your number, your PIN number, and money comes out. This is instant karma. And then you have delayed karma, or like a check, you know, it may take 1 or 2 days for clearance. You have delayed karma. What is an example of instant karma? You sow a mustard seed, within weeks the crop will come. What is example of delayed karma? You sow a coconut plant. Like in our surround land, we have sown coconut trees. So it will take 10 years, 20 years for their fruit to come. So this is like delayed karma. Sometimes you slap someone and that person may slap you back, instant karma. But someone may murder someone, but for the punishment to come, for the case to be investigated, it may take years sometimes. But then the result will come. It is called delayed karma. One of the classic example of delayed karma is the example of Dhritarashtra. Arjun Prabhu, you like to tell the story?
Yes. So delayed karma. So the story is like this, to explain this concept of delayed karma. Once Dhritarashtra, after the war of Kurukshetra was over, he lost all his 100 sons. He lost his kingdom, and later on, when he met Lord Krishna, he asked Lord Krishna, he said, Krishna, I know that you are the Supreme Lord. You know past, present and future. So I want to ask you a question. Yes, why did I go through this all suffering? I lost my children, I lost my kingdom, I was born blind. From the beginning I am suffering all these things. So can you throw light on this? So Lord Krishna told him that in the past, in the previous 50 lifetimes previous to this life, you were a hunter's son. And because of that, when you were a small child, you went to a tree. And the tree had a nest of 100 birds, baby birds. So what you did, you killed all the 100 birds and you blinded the eyes of the mother and father bird. So because of that cruelty, now you are suffering this same this thing, punishment. So then Dhritarashtra understood, yeah, that's true. But then, how do I understand it? Why did you take 50 lifetimes to punish me? So Krishna said, for you to get 100 children of your own, you didn't have that many bias credits. So you had to earn those bias credits before you could have 100 children. So that is how Krishna told Dhritarashtra that you want to balance certain karma, you want to suffer certain things, you have to earn something before you lose it. Just like, say, if someone has to experience loss of a big kingdom or a big bungalow, to experience that, first of all, he has to have a bungalow. So in this way, first someone may have to earn certain things to lose it. So this is called as delayed karma. Delayed karma means the karma will be experienced, but it may take several lifetimes to get that experience. It's called a delayed karma. Next, you want to continue, Guru?
No, you continue, please.
So the law of karma works on whom? Next slide. So, law of karma actually works on every living entity who is in this material world, and it has different features basically. So this thing is individual karma. Individual karma means I have done certain sin and I have to suffer. So I may get those suffering, something like a disease, some accident, or certain loss of finances, and I suffer. So there is an individual karma. Then next slide. So something is known as collective karma. Collective karma is the nature arranges in such a way that all those people who had to suffer a certain similar karma, they all come to a certain, somehow they come to one place, and there they undergo the suffering. Sometimes it may be a whole nation which undergoes some suffering. It may be a certain villages or certain things. Sometimes a flight crash. So all these things are called collective karma, where the karma is suffered by many individuals together. So one thing to keep in mind is, in the law of karma, no one suffers extra or no one suffers less. It is whoever suffers, it is either what he deserves to suffer, or if he suffers, he doesn't suffer more or less. So some more usually asked questions about law of karma. So ignorance is not an excuse in law of karma. Someone may say that, okay, I never knew this all this while before attending this course of JHD. Today you all are telling me that I have to suffer my own karma. I was ignorant of it, and throughout this life so many things which I have done. So what about that? Or there are so many people who are ignorant. So what about them? So if you see, ignorance is not an excuse anywhere actually. Once one devotee was traveling through first time he had come to city Bombay, and there he wanted to travel through the local train. So he bought a ticket and he was waiting for the train to arrive. And he saw that the train was so crowded everywhere. People were just coming, and they were just entering the train. So many people were alighting from the train. So he was very afraid. How do I enter this? So he was, after observing for some time, he understood that at particular place where the train comes, there are very less people. Even the compartments are empty, and even there is no rush to enter. So he thought, so I am so intelligent. After coming for Bombay first time, I figured it out. So he went and stood at the place where there was no rush, and the next train came, and easily he could enter inside. And there also he found a nice sitting place also. So sitting happily there. After some time the TC came, he said, ticket please. And I'm a gentleman. I always take a ticket. So he did, without a fear, he just showed the ticket. So then the TC said, now you have to pay a fine of 100 rupees. For what? That you are traveling in the first class train, but you have a ticket of second class. That, oh, I never knew this. I didn't notice it. How do I figure out it is a first class? He said, you have to pay a fine now. I said, no, please excuse me this time. I have come first time. I didn't know that there is first class and second class. So the TC told him, this fine will remind you that next time you will not again make the same mistake. For it's a duty that before you come to use some facility, you have to know the rules. Similarly, as soon as we are born, it's our duty that we should know what our duties are. We should know what is expected of us. So being in ignorance is not an excuse. It is our own mistake. So law of karma will not excuse a person if he is ignorant of the law. Next slide. So do good karma cancel bad karma. Just like say if I do 3 bad karmas and I do 8 good karma. So will it cancel and then I'll get 5 good karma? It's like if I earn some money by doing some sinful activities and then I do some good activities by donation or some service. So will I match it or can I cancel it? It says no. The good karma and bad karma don't cancel each other. For 7 minus 4 will not be 3. So what will be 7 good karma and minus 4 or 4 bad karma. So we have to suffer bad karma separately and we have to enjoy good karma separately. Both will have their own reactions. Next. Yeah. So then the original question, why do bad things happen to good people? So just as we saw, karma are accumulated for many lifetimes. It may be that we are suffering for our karma right now, which we have committed maybe many lifetimes back. So a nice example will illustrate this. Like in the big farmers in the foreign countries, they have a storage, granary storage. They call it cello. So what is the system? They will take the harvest of this year and from top of that silo they will put it down in the storage. And then again next year, again they will harvest it, again they will put from the top. In this way they keep on piling the grains from the top. And to use it or to sell it, they will remove from the ground. So say in 1 year you get very nice grains, good harvest, good quality. You put it in the silo. Then next again you get a good one. And in between you get a bad harvest and you can put them inside. And again you get good ones. So we do not know when the bad grains will come from below, from down. So similarly, we should not think that say if I am suffering for certain things and I don't remember the sin which I have committed for that suffering. So what should I understand? That this is my previous karma of some certain lifetime. This was very much understood by people in India for many ages. They knew that if some suffering comes, this is my own doing, and they would very happily say that okay, let me suffer it and finish it off. At the same time, you may be seeing some people who are doing so many bad things, doing so many sins, but you may say, oh, they are prospering, and here I am such a good person, but I am not happy. So we should know that they are enjoying their good karma of certain lifetime, and as soon as it is over, suffering also will come to them. And if they are doing any bad activity right now, the suffering may be immediate depending upon the bad activity, or it may come in the later lifetime or in many few other lifetimes later on. So in this way, we should be able to know that the suffering happens in various lifetimes and karmas get accumulated as the this go on, as the lifetimes keep on continuing. So this is how we can understand that bad things have to be suffered maybe now or later, and good things will be enjoyed. The current good may be enjoyed later on also. So nothing goes waste and nothing gets cancelled. Next thing. So how does the law of karma work? So law of karma, the soul desires, the material nature executes or helps in execution, and Paramatma is the judge. Paramatma remembers each and everything. What are different kinds of karma? Just a quick revision. So karma, vikarma and akarma. And what are the duration of the results of karma? Instant and delayed. The law of karma works on whom? Collectively as well as individually. If I don't know the law of karma, will it still work? Yes. Ignorance is no excuse. Does good and bad karma nullify each other? No. Why do bad things happen to good people? Because people suffer for their past actions. Right now, they may not have done any sin, and the previous karmas are affecting them. This in the technical words, it's called as prarabdha. Yeah, next slide. So now understanding all this, all the story of karma, knowing about sins, and knowing about prakriti, karma. What should I do now practically? How should I avoid karma, or how should I be free from all that what we have done before? Next slide. So this is a very important thing to understand, that human life is like a train junction. Only in human life we have a choice. If you see in other species of life, they don't have the chance of choosing things. Like if you see the lion will eat meat for sure. It will not go and eat grass. And the cow, it will never eat meat, even if it is starving. It will always eat grass. So they don't have any choice. They are completely programmed according to which they behave. They just know how to enjoy certain things and suffer, but they cannot choose. They are not choosers. As human beings, we have been given this superior intelligence to know good from bad, to know adharma and dharma, to know what is knowledge and what is ignorance. So we have a capability of higher inquiry. So what we should do as a human life is we should take this opportunity very, very seriously. Like in a junction means, towards the junction there are many routes which come, and from there are many routes which go. Just like from here, from Madgaon to Bombay, in between there is no junction. While a train, we can only go towards Bombay. But from Bombay, which is the first junction, say from Thane, from there we can choose either to go to Gujarat, to go to further north or south or east or west. So that is the meaning of junction. Similarly, the human body is like crossroads. We can choose either to, like in Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Urdho gachanti sattvasto madhya tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna uttista adho gachanti tamasa. Either we can continue towards Swargaloka, top, we can go towards hellish planets or animal kingdom, or we can again be born as human beings on this earthly planet. Or the best is, or we can choose to go directly to Vaikuntha, beyond this material world. So this human life is the place of choice. So we should never waste this human life. Like we saw in the first this thing, eating, mating, sleeping, defending. We can do it in any species. But inquiry on for this higher truth can only be done in human life. So it is that if we waste it, we are great losers. Next. So it's explained that life is like a preparation and death is the examination. So just a summary of today's class. Prakriti is material nature, and today we saw what is Prakriti. Basically, this material world we saw as a Prakriti, which is Dukhalayam, Ashashvatam. Kal, we saw how it is cyclic and how it is in different yuga cycles which comes and it keeps on rotating. And karma are the activities which we do in this material world under the supervision of the soul, or the super soul. So in this way, we can take some questions, quick questions here. If there are any questions, I'll take one or two and then actually continue. I'll begin from the top. There is a Buddhist saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Does this mean that we may get back or bad karma? But our state of mind will determine if we take it in a good way or a bad way. Yeah, see, the pain is inevitable, means the physical pain or the various reactions which come to us, they are inevitable. But pain is or suffering is optional because it depends upon attitude, the way we treat it, the mind and our intelligence, how we take it. So if we have proper knowledge, then we can take the pain in a proper attitude, and with that same pain we can learn certain lessons from that, and we can use it for reformation. So that is the meaning of that. Is our destiny written by God in the material world, or we can write our own destiny in this material world? Yeah. So God doesn't write our destiny. He just keeps a track of our karma, and that becomes our destiny. Like if you see, judge doesn't punish a person or is not responsible for the crime, but he is responsible to execute the judgment. Similarly, God as Paramatma, He has given this facility, and we are the ones who are using it in a bad way or good way. And Krishna as Paramatma, Maya Adakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. He is Adaksha. Adaksha means supervisor, and He just executes it. So God is not responsible, and He doesn't write our destiny in that sense, but He keeps track of the destiny, and we are the ones who create our destiny by our actions. Scientists don't believe in karma, but work is worship. Then will they suffer karma suffering? Yes, anyone for that matter, maybe a scientist or an atheist or believe or not believe. Anyone in this world who is born as a human being in the human body, he suffers karma. The animals do not suffer, trees and other species, because they are not expected to know good from bad. But as a human being, we are meant to know good from bad and properly judge it. So scientists or anyone for that matter will suffer this life's karma in future, and now they are born because of their previous karma. Achut Babu, continue.
Yeah. So if someone is murdered, could this be his own bad karma, or this is a result of someone else's bad karma? How will the good person who's murdered get justice as per the law of karma for his loss of life? Yeah. So first thing is, if someone is murdered, we can't tell that, oh, that fellow's bad karma. So, anyway, I was like the instrument giving his bad karma, so don't blame me. So we really don't know what it is. So this law of karma is something that it's very difficult to find out whose reaction, who is giving. It's very difficult to trace it. So what is important is we be responsible and follow the laws of God. If we break the laws of God, we'll have to face the consequence. So if someone is murdered, the question is, the second part of the question is, how will he face the, how will he get justice for it? Because he's murdered. So in the next life, probably he will get a chance to inflict some pain upon the person who has murdered him in some way, you know. So the cycle comes back again. So if not through him, through some other channel, the suffering will come to this person. So in this world, there is this boomerang effect. You know the boomerang, you throw the boomerang, it will come back exactly to that spot. How it comes back is God's way of working. It may be through that same person or it may be through someone else, but the suffering definitely comes. So is karma applicable to demigods, demons and ghosts? Yes, it's applicable to everyone. As Lord said in the Bhagavad Gita, birth and death continue until the soul surrenders to Krishna. If any living entity does not surrender to Krishna till the end of Kali Yuga, will they come back in Satya Yuga, which is the next Yuga after Satya Yuga, after Kali Yuga? Yes. If someone doesn't surrender to Krishna, if someone surrenders to Krishna, he goes out of the cycle of birth and death. But if someone doesn't surrender to Krishna, he will come back. So if it is at the end of Kali Yuga, yes, he will take birth in Satya Yuga, or he may take birth in some other universe, but the process will continue. If a soldier kills an enemy soldier, does he collect bad karma or no? No. Because if a soldier is doing something on behalf of the government, that's not accounted for. When annihilation takes place, it's always at the end of Kali Yuga or always. So there are different types of annihilation. At the end of Kali Yuga, there is one partial annihilation, but majorly it is like after 1 day of Brahma, which is like 100 Yuga cycles, there is one annihilation that takes place. And after the life of Brahma, which is like Brahma lives for 100 years, you know. So that's a long calculation. Some other time we'll tell you the calculation. So after that, there is like a full annihilation of this material world. Will devotion to Krishna nullify the bad effects of karma? Yes, definitely. Any other question anyone else wants to ask? Unmute and ask. Okay, there's one more question. You told us that we spiritual soul in the material world for imprisonment. Then why we get happiness? If you get happiness, then how we get to know that we are getting punishment? Yeah. So it is Krishna's mercy that even though we are in the material world for a rectification, this material world is like an imprisonment, still we do get some happiness. But the understanding is anyone who's intelligent will understand that yes, there is happiness in this world, but the amount of happiness is very limited. The amount of suffering is quite a lot here. And even the happiness that you get is quite limited. It's going to pass away soon. It's not, so that's why in our first session we discussed this. There is something called pleasure and something called happiness. Something called sukha and something called ananda. In this material world, definitely there is little sukha that is there, little pleasures that you get in this world, definitely. But there is no ananda, happiness per se in this world. Just like in a prison also, there is some amount of pleasure you get. You get food there, some amount of music may be there, some pleasures you get there in the prison also. But happiness is not there. Happiness is possible only when we are completely free. Are horoscopes true? Are they based on our karma? Yes, horoscopes are true, it's based on our karma. Is it right to believe astrology totally? How can we change it? Yes, you can believe astrology, provided there is a very pakka astrologer there who knows the science well. But then we definitely can change astrology. That is why we are practicing the Journey of Self-Discovery course. We are trying to understand this Gita, wisdom of the Gita. So Krishna tells in the end of the Gita that if someone surrenders unto me, I will take care of all his reactions. So one time Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, someone asked Srila Prabhupada, can we change the lines on our palm? You know, lines in our palm are our destiny. Prabhupada said, yes, if you can use your hands and clap in the Kirtan of Krishna, your palm lines will change, your destiny will change. What happens when animals like dogs and cats and insects die? They will be promoted to the next life. So there is a natural evolution that happens in the animal species. So someone who's in the body of a tree gets a body of an aquatic, someone who's an aquatic goes to a reptile, someone who is an animal gets promoted to the higher animals, and then human life. So the gradual promotion happens. Only in the human life, karma applies in the sense that there is choices that we have to make. Otherwise, it's default promotion that keeps
the
happening.
sender to execute transaction.
If in this life I am a human, will I be a human in my next life or depends on my karma? Yeah. So there is no guarantee that we will always be a human. We can go down the lower species also. But if someone does spiritual life well, even if it doesn't complete it, at least the assurance is you will get a human life again. Yeah. So does dip in the river Ganga actually wash away karma? Yes, it does wash away. But then it should be in the right mood. And it should not be in the mood that, oh, I'll go on Ganga, dip my, wash away all my sins, and I will come back and start sinning. No, it doesn't work. So the intention counts a lot. And the conviction and the faith you have also counts a lot. Anything else? Any other question? If next Janma is human, is the gender same? No. Gender is also not the same. Depends on what kind of, Krishna tells in the Gita, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajyati antakalevanam tam tam evati kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. So Krishna says, whatever you think at the time of death, you get a form accordingly. So if a man is thinking too much about a woman, then you may get a body of a woman in the next life. Or if a woman is thinking too much about a man, she may get a body of a man. Yeah. So it all depends like that. Any other question? Anyone else wants to unmute and ask? 4 lakh human species, can you mention some? Okay. So the understanding of 4 lakh human species means that different levels of consciousness. So when the scriptures explain 84 lakh species, among that 4 lakh humans, it doesn't mean that forms will be different, but it means that in human consciousness will be different. The lowest will be almost animalistic type consciousness. People who are almost thinking in the level of animals, and slowly the higher levels that come are the 4 lakhs types of humans in terms of their consciousness. So it not necessarily it means bodily structures. It's not like you have 4 lakhs different bodies of humans. It's not like that. It's more based on the consciousness.